Charlie87 is an infamous FNAF theory that claims that Charlotte Emily, the spirit that possesses the puppet from FNAF 2, died 2 years after the missing children's incident in 1987. If true, this changes quite a few things about the lore that we've believed for over a decade, and also raises quite a few questions. But first, the evidence. The puppet debuts in FNAF 2, which takes place in 1987, shortly after its reopening, and we can see what it was intended for at first in the security puppet minigame from FNAF 6, being as a security device to track the kids in the pizzeria. This minigame shows Charlotte being locked outside of the pizzeria while the security puppet is foiled by a cardboard box blocking it. Once the puppet is free, it follows Charlie outside, where it's raining, and finds her dead before falling next to her, likely leading to her possession of the puppet. This minigame is almost certainly a more detailed depiction of the Take Cake to the Children minigame from FNAF 2, in which a bear we call Cake Bear is handing out cake to children. Wow! We can see a child that's stuck outside and they get murdered by a purple guy, followed by the puppet jump scare, which is why we believe this is Charlotte. We believe this to be a Fredbear's Family Diner location instead of a Freddy Fazbear's Pizza location, due to the seemingly smaller footprint and presence of only one real animatronic. But this doesn't actually tell us anything more concrete than there's a bear handing out cake. I think it's more compelling to say that this location likely opened following some kind of security incident or controversy with Fazbear, and lo and behold, what do we hear about in FNAF 2? The toy animatronics have been connected to a criminal database so they can spot any wrongdoers and protect the children, which sounds to me like a direct reaction to the missing children's incident, since someone was convicted of it in 1985 after a spring Bonnie suit was caught on camera taking them, and it was later tied to a higher up at the company. This explains why they specifically added a database of felons to them, instead of just adding more security guards, since there were seemingly no signs something like this would happen. And if you aren't sufficiently compelled, I have another what if for you. The opening newspaper in FNAF 2 calls it a grand reopening, meaning there was yet another Fazbear, not Fredbear, location before this opening in 1987. And we can see in the security puppet minigame that it's posted up right next to the entrance, which it no longer is in FNAF 2. Which means that the security incident that prompts the creation of the toy animatronics could perhaps be the death of Charlotte, which would also kinda make more sense, since the puppet has clearly been possessed for some time, as the phone guy alludes to. This also explains why we never got a game set at this old location. There were only ever 2 locations, and the FNAF 2 location was just open, then something happened which made it close, and it reopened sometime in October or November of 1987. It reopening this late in the year makes it so possible for Charlie to die in the first few months, possess the puppet and roam the halls like a creep, potentially even helping the children to possess the animatronics during this period, as we see in this minigame, and already have her reputation for always thinking by the time we get to play. In the Save Them minigame, which we'll talk about later, we can see a puddle of blood beneath the puppet's box as well as a body. Potentially Charlie's after being dragged back into the building when Fazbear found her, since as we know they like to cover up stuff like this to save their reputation. I don't really think this is likely though, since we would need 4 other kids to die around the same time as Charlie. Now is when I ask the question that's been nagging at me for over a year. Is Save Them just showing the MCI, and there's actually no event called the Dead Children's Incident or the DCI? I think maybe. There's a few things in this franchise that many take for fact, despite their findings being relatively weak, and a lot of these facts never come up again or are relevant in the years following. An example of this is the fandom belief of Cassidy, the vengeful spirit. Cassidy being a name first seen in the survival logbook, and since then only seen in non-canon areas, such as game code that was later removed or merch drops that were immediately rolled back. If another mass casualty event happened in Fazbear Past consisting of 4 to 5 children and we never hear of it again, why? These kids don't seemingly possess anything, at least nothing concrete, and there's no event talked about, no freeing of the spirits or focus on them during Happiest Day, no representation of them when remaking many events of Fazbear Past in Security Breach, nothing. So what if the DCI is actually the MCI, and the killings happened here? We already know the classic animatronics from FNAF 1 were built after FNAF 2, repurposed from parts of both the toy and withered animatronics. So with this in mind, I have a new timeline for how the MCI went down. The FNAF 2 location opens sometime in the early to mid 1980s, with a tone similar to the FNAF 1 location, and using the what we'll call unwithered animatronics as its attractions. Sometime after, William Afton begins his murder spree, likely in early to mid 1985. Killing children and stuffing them into the unwithered animatronics, which causes them to be haunted. When the final 2 kids are killed and someone who isn't William is arrested for the killings, William stops his spree, so people think that whoever is in custody is guilty. Sometime after that, the bodies are discovered and removed by police, but the spirits continue to haunt them as we can see Freddy still roaming while the bodies have been removed. This is what people believe to be the DCI. I think the person who was arrested is Henry, and after a year or two of being forced to end his experiments to bring his children back to life, William decides to kill Charlie outside Freddy's, since from his view, Henry has taken his children away by being arrested, so William will take Henry's child. This causes Freddy's to close once more and introduce further security measures, since there's clearly a murderer still out there targeting them. This could also lead to Henry being released as they take another look at the evidence, but that's a little far-fetched, as it could be perceived as a revenge killing on the murderer's daughter. After this, they reopen with the toy animatronics. The events of FNAF 2 happen, and Jeremy gets his head bit, which closes the restaurant permanently. A few years later, the FNAF 1 location opens, using a new set of animatronics known as the Classics. They do not contain the bodies of the MCI, but the puppet helps them to possess these new bodies, which we can see in this minigame where she helps them to wear the masks. This minigame is not literal. This timeline solves why the withered animatronics are haunted, despite clearly being different models than the classics. How Charlie can die last and still help the spirits to possess new bodies, how someone can be arrested for the crime, but William is free to go get spring-locked, and also how 5 bodies are out lying in the open in FNAF 2, but it's the same 5 as the MCI. Now that that's done, this next part I'm gonna say up front I completely disagree with, but many say that the minigame Midnight Motorist from FNAF 6 both takes place in 1987 and presents William Afton driving home after killing Charlie, outside of Freddy's location. They say it takes place in 1987 for a few reasons, one of them being that the BPM of the song that plays during it, Smashing Windshields, is 187, and because the composer confirmed there was never another version of the song that had a different BPM. This is also notable because apparently every other song in the game has a BPM that ends in either 0 or 5. Also, in the probably cancelled game 5 Laps at Freddy's, there is a cart called the Midnight Motor, based on the car seen in the minigame. The car has both a pair of dice hanging from the mirror that shows the numbers 8 and 7, as well as a spring bunny head on the antenna. To be honest, I find it completely improbable that Click Team not only knows for sure that William is the driver and that it happens in 1987, but I think there's absolutely no way Scott greenlit this being where it would be confirmed in a shoddy, thrown together demo for a game that got cancelled a year later. In Security Breach, there's the number 87 next to a purple go-kart. In Ultimate Custom Night, Withered Chica has a voice line in which she claims to be the first, which would place Charlie's death sometime after the MCI begins. This also implies that the Withers were the original suits the bodies were stuffed into. In Help Wanted 2, there's also a puzzle that requires you to place memory dolls in this order, with the puppet being the last. This could imply that Charlie dies last if the order is the death order. You know, I went into this video expecting to be mildly compelled by Charlie87, but overall disagree. I think I might actually be a Charlie87 believer now with the new timeline. Of course, there's some strong evidence against though, such as Henry's line from FNAF 6, a wound first inflicted on me. For this to be true, alongside Charlie87, Henry either needs to be ignoring the MCI as wounds that William inflicted on people first, be referring to another thing William did, such as kill Sammy Emily, a character that likely doesn't exist in the games, or the MCI would need to happen following Charlie's death, but our consensus is that it happens in the summer of 1985. To be honest, I'm still confused as to what he's talking about, but it's in my list of video subjects, so maybe soon I'll look into it further. I'm excited to hear what people have to say about this. I at least think some of these ideas could be true and could change what we think about the first few games.